And she's like, Ben, YNAB doesn't have to know about everything.
Yes, it does.
Well, it kind of does because it's zero based, because of the zero based nature of it. If you don't tell it about all your spending, it kind of loses its whole point.
How you make it, how you wanna make it, how you make it, how you wanna.
You are not alone.
No, you are not. Well, Ernie, today we're talking about common YNAB mistakes. And usually when we talk about this, it's like beginner mistakes, right? And we have some of those, but this is Budget Nerds, and a lot of veteran YNABers watch this too. So we're going to talk about some of those too. But I think we'll start with some common setup mistakes. And if you are a veteran YNABer, then you can help new folks avoid these mistakes. So that'd be good.
Yeah, this is a search term that we see regularly come through our channel. I know it gets asked on social and to the support team. And so we thought, hey, no two better people at YNAB to talk about common mistakes than someone, Ben, you who's involved in social, me who's an educator, I'm teaching workshops. So these are things that we encounter on a regular basis.
I thought you were going to say no better person to do it, to talk about these mistakes than the people that made all these mistakes.
Well,
because a lot of them, yeah.
That's the thing. But yeah, a lot of these were mistakes that I made at the beginning.
Yeah, so we can get into that. Well, the first one, we'll just get right into it, shall we? Using the software without learning the method first. I think this is a huge one, and I think we need to do better about like teaching the method in the software, and we're working on that. But a lot of folks come in with like this preconceived notion of what it means to manage their money, and they try to like, or maybe like they've been using a spreadsheet or something, and they kind of try to make YNAB do that. But this is opinionated software. Like we have a way of doing things, and it's different than you've done it before, probably. And if you come in with a preconceived idea, YNAB's going to fight you on it. It really is, right?
Yes, and it is very different than anything you've done in the past. Something Jesse always used to say on his Whiteboard Wednesdays and on his podcast, and you probably remember this, was forget everything you've learned about budgeting. And that, I just remember that really sticking out to me. And it's not like, oh, I just completely, because it's tough to forget, what you actually have learned. But it made me lean into all of the YNAB resources, especially the method. At the time, it was the 4 rules. So what do these rules actually mean, and how are they implemented in the software? And once I really started leaning into that YNAB methodology, that's when things started to click. Oh, I can't do it the way I used to. I need to start doing it this way instead.
I saw somebody on the last episode that we did about you can start YNAB anytime, right? Or maybe that was 2 episodes ago. I don't remember. But anyways, the comment was, I have been waiting because I wanted to wait till the first, but I used that time to watch every video about YNAB. And so I was like, okay, maybe that is a good reason to wait, because you're going to start on a really good footing. Like you're going to get started right. And my parents just started YNAB. Knock on wood, it sticks for them. It'd be so cool.
Nice.
They had a lot of high praise for you, Ernie, for your getting started video. Let me tell you, they were like, especially cool. My dad was like, "Oh, Ernie's great, dude." So,
that's so nice of them.
Yeah, I'm so glad they watched those videos first, because they get it, and they don't come in with all these preconceived ideas and kind of struggle. So very exciting. When people get it like that. And then sometimes people come in and struggle a little because, they don't understand the method, but they learn it and it's fine. Yep. But if you can learn it first, I think it helps, right?
Absolutely. That's huge. All right. Another common mistake is you get hung up on categories and targets. So this is for I would say primarily the new YNABer, but I think seasoned YNABers can get hung up on categories and targets as well. And here's what I mean by that. Trying to get the perfect list of categories. And then with targets are how we plan in YNAB. I always describe it as, being able to tell a category, here's how much I want to assign, and here's when I want to assign the money by. Trying to get those targets perfect, like to set them up perfect. Should it be set aside another or refill up to, or what is the date that I want this money by? Is it monthly, yearly, or should I do a custom target, or to get the just right amount?
Right.
And I think folks, like I said, get too focused on this, and they think that the targets are the point of YNAB.
Right.
And this is something that I've actually been challenging myself with in how I teach workshops.
Oh yeah, okay. Because we've been real big on targets for a long time, I think.
We
As,
have
this is
been.
the first thing you
Targets
gotta
are
do.
great. I love them.
Yeah.
But the purpose of the targets is to make the assigning easier.
Right.
So you don't have all that information in your head or a bank statement or a spreadsheet. It's in YNAB, and you can just quickly look at a category and say, oh, here's how much money I eventually want to put in this category by the end of the month.
And the point is the assigning. So maybe it's a little backwards trying to focus on the targets too much.
Yeah, the point is the assigning. And so I realized that when I'm teaching getting started, I would spend 15 minutes talking through customization of categories and setting up those targets. And then I would just rush through the assigning piece. And I'm like, this is backwards. And so now I'm experimenting, and I'm just rushing through the customization of categories and the target setup, because I think those are pretty intuitive. Folks get that.
It has gotten easier.
It has.
With new updates and everything too.
Yeah,
maybe even one reason why we spent so much time on it before was because it was so confusing, and now it's a little more intuitive. I think there's still more improvements to be made there, but it's more intuitive than it was before, at least.
Definitely. So. And other teachers are experimenting with this as well, and we've had conversations where we'll go through a basic explanation of targets, asking if there's any questions, and there's crickets. So I think that's always a good sign.
Right.
And then we can focus on the method and those 5 questions.
And you can kind of get to the core of what YNAB is if you go straight to the assigning, or at least focus on the assigning more, because that's what it is. This is envelopes. We're putting money in envelopes, and you can get that analogy in quickly, and it everything clicks there. Whereas the targets, would you call them more of an advanced feature? And maybe not a beginner feature? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, you can totally start YNAB without setting any targets.
You can, yeah. I know that because I did, because
we didn't have targets.
4 days. Yeah, we didn't have targets, right? Yeah, I would look at what I assigned last month to tell me what to assign this month, and then maybe make a change, or write it in the name of the category, So
I forgot about those days. Totally.
Yeah. People still do that today. That's still a very common thing. So I guess you can get hung up. I think it's it might be good to experiment with it, but don't get hung up on it. Focus on what matters, right?
Yeah, and you don't need to add one to every single category on day one. Maybe just add a couple targets and be like, oh, that's kind of cool, and see how they work and what you like, what you don't like.
Now, I will say, one thing that's really important about targets, though, is it does unlock a lot of features. It unlocks underfunded and a lot of auto assign features, and it unlocks some features that we're working on right now that I can't talk about right now because it's not out yet. But again, those are also more advanced. So yeah, maybe there's more room for, hey, let's focus on the envelope planning part of it and assigning the money.
Yeah.
A little less on targets.
I know one of the advantages of the targets is when you add one to all your categories, then you basically have what we call a YNAB template.
Yeah.
And you can look at the underfunded to get the total cost of the plan.
Yeah, it costs you, right?
And, YNABers like that because they can compare their plan to their expected income for the month just to make sure that plan is realistic. But that's not necessary to get started. To getting started. That's definitely something you can do months down the road.
And ever since I had the big cash flow change with changes to my childcare situation last year, I've gotten a little more loosey-goosey on the targets, Ernie. I'm a little more like you. I'm a little more chill.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice to experiment a little bit, just yesterday, my wife and I were having a budget meeting, or a couple days ago. Kind of a mid-month budget meeting, and I was like, I wanted to have like a remote work personal spending category. I was like, what if we each had some money? This is actually just my son in the room. This is actually just a way to sneakily get more personal spending money. That's all I wanted because that's all I ever want. But she liked the idea too, where it's basically like, yeah, we each put some money into a category specifically for like getting coffee at a coffee shop if we want to leave the house and work.
Yep.
Right. Or maybe like a pastry or something. And I was just so chill about it because I was like, oh, I can add Target, and we're looking at maybe increasing college spending, college savings later. And I was like, well, if we need that money, we can just change our mind later, So
Yeah.
But whereas before, the Target had to match to the penny, and I was like, it had to match the income, so something else would have to come down if we wanted to do that. And I was just kind of hamstrung. So, anyways, I'm liking it. It's a little more chill,
Nice. Well, and the other thing here, and you kind of hit on it, but the other thing about not getting too hung up on categories and targets is life is constantly changing. Like, I didn't realize at the beginning of my YNAB journey how often I would be changing my categories, my groups, and my targets. And not because I think it's fun, and sometimes when I'm bored, I just do that kind of stuff, but because my life is actually changing.
Yeah.
Expenses are dropping off, new ones are getting added in. We
Just
go
the
through a
prices of
season
things
where,
are changing. Yeah.
yeah, we're not driving as much, so we don't need to put the same amount of gas money into the category every single. Like, everything is changing, and so don't try to get perfection out of the gate because you're never going to achieve it.
Man, what if it was like, what if you could like have a target that like pegged the amount to like the price of gas like nationally or in your state, and it changed? Nope, this is getting too hung up on targets.
No, but
it's like, wouldn't that be cool if it like changed based on the prices? But no,
right.
silly.
And then YNAB was able to monitor your activity and be like, oh, the past 3 months are vastly different than the previous 9 months.
That would be nice. A little more analysis where it's like, yeah, maybe like just like anecdotal, like, hey, we noticed this change, that'd be kind of cool. But
okay, this is a total hot take, but
this is nerdiness.
We shouldn't even have to worry about targets. I think YNAB should do that all for us.
Well, we import stuff, right? So we've talked about this internally, and I think this is a thing that it might be possible, but I feel like it's a little bit fraught. Where like, okay, we could like not actually import past transactions, but like look at past transactions to say, okay, this is how much your mortgage is, this is how much the car payment is, this is and just like create the targets for you.
Right.
I always get a little nervous with too much automation in YNAB because I really want the YNABber to be in the driver's seat. You know what I mean? So I think there's like tension there, but it does feel kind of silly when it's like fixed bills and it's like we could know what they are and we could just tell you instead of you having to look it up. If it's always going to be, I just look up what it is and then I enter it, it's like, why not just skip the middleman, and just do it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I remember you do gain so much awareness in creating those targets.
Yeah. Especially if you do it yourself. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense for fixed bills, but like, what if it was like for groceries? It's like, oh, I guess you could be like, hey, your average grocery spending past 3 months has been, $800 a month or whatever.
Yeah.
That might help. That would help people who put in way too little on groceries, which always happens 100% of the time. But yeah, I don't know. There's something to... I wonder what the nerds would think about that. Like, if that was the thing, would that be like bad for the YNAB method, or would it be good? I think there's always a tension between automation and the user actually having control.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you can always change it too. But all right, we are literally getting hung up on categories and targets.
Yeah. This episode is getting hung up on categories and targets.
I mean, we're nerdies. We're nerds. This is what it's all about. All right, let's move on though. Next one: adding savings as tracking accounts, or I would add maybe just not adding your savings account as all. This is a common beginner mistake. I will say I'm a little more soft on this because if somebody's coming in and they're totally overwhelmed, I could see a case for like, hey, let's just focus on your spending accounts right now, your credit card and your checking account. Let's not worry about savings, right? But
Absolutely.
there's a lot of reasons why people do this, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the big reasons is they don't want to spend the money.
Yeah.
And so
worried.
I think that's just not understanding the YNAB method, right? Using the traditional budgeting methodology that the person is so used to.
Yeah.
Right? They think, because YNAB is going to take your savings dollars and it's going to funnel it to ready to assign.
Right.
And so you see that big number in ready to assign, you're like, YNAB wants me to spend.
Right.
But we're just encouraging you to make a plan. Like, what's
give it
the
a purpose.
purpose of those dollars?
Well, and I think it's especially hard when your savings money is just this amorphous blob of like, well, I'm saving because I'm supposed to save, and like you take from it when the checking account gets low, and there's no like rhyme or reason to it. Because asking, hey, what is this money for? It can be hard because, again, we talked about this before. Like, say like you have $1,000 in savings, and you have like 5 ideas of what it's for, right? It's almost like in your mind you multiply that money and you make it $5,000, right?
Right.
But once you actually give it a job, like all those possibilities collapse into one, and so it almost feels like you lost money, right?
Yes.
And so it can be painful. So I think that's another reason why people don't want to add it, because it would force them to actually give it one job. And that can be kind of painful when you are multiplying the money in your head,
Yeah, it can be painful and can be scary. Like, what if I give it the wrong job?
Right.
But again, as you get used to giving jobs to your dollars, it doesn't become as awkward, and you realize, I can change my mind later on, and that's totally okay.
Yeah. I think the big concern is, like, they feel like they need to protect that money because for so long before YNAB, you've been looking at their account balance to manage all their spending, and that's just not. When we talked about this so much about why that's not useful, and they feel like it's almost like combining the account balances together, and so they're going to get confused. But it's not. You're going to separate it, and the categories are going to protect your money, because you're not going to look at the account balances to decide how much to spend on groceries. You're going to look at the grocery category and decide it there, right?
Yeah. So when you go to Chipotle, because that's our go-to example.
Exactly.
And that's my go-to example in workshops too, just because it's always on my mind. But that Chipotle transaction is not going to get categorized to vacation or to the new roof category or whatever you're saving for. It's going to get categorized to eating out.
Yeah. And why is it important to add it? I think it's important. I guess it's important because you need to embrace that scarcity. You can't really figure out what you want until you actually recognize, no, this money can only do one thing, and what's the most important thing, and like actually put money where your mouth is and decide what the most important thing is, and then you discover, okay, this is what I actually value, and then you can move your spending in that direction. But if you have a bunch of money in a savings account, or even a little money in a savings account that you don't give a job, you miss out. You miss out on that exercise that helps you discover who you are.
Yeah. And I think another piece here is it makes decision making more difficult when that savings account isn't in YNAB. Because, and I'm not talking like the minor, $3 coffee at Starbucks. It's the big stuff, right? Oh, we just had this big car repair, or, oh my goodness, we owe a ton of taxes now. Like, how are we going to pay for this thing? And if you're looking at your categories that don't include savings, you're missing out on information. You don't have everything. And so I think it makes it a lot more difficult to figure out, how are we going to move forward now?
Yeah. Or you might take the money from the savings account and add an inflow into YNAB, and you'll almost always feel bad about that because you never really decided what the money was for. So you don't know what you gave up in order to make that decision. You lose the trade-off decisions. I just think that, this is the key for me. This is why it's so important to have all your cash in YNAB that's accessible to you right now, is because you'll lose trade-off decisions. You won't really know what you gave up when you do spend that money. And some people are like, well, I'm never going to spend money in your savings account. It's like, no, that's not how this works. You will. You will eventually, because that's what it's there for. Money's meant to be spent, right? And so losing that trade-off causes all this second guessing, all this cognitive dissonance, all this frustration that you could have solved by just giving it a job. And then you know exactly, you might not be super happy having to take it from there, but at least you know exactly what you gave up. So
yeah, that's why I include all my cash, including the cash in my wallet. I know people don't like accounting for that. They look at it as free money. Sure, that's fine. But for me, I don't know. It makes the trade-off so much more evident. It makes decision-making a lot more easier when I'm considering
the bookkeeping is
everything.
Simpler too. I mean, we did a whole episode on why we like cash accounts, but
yes,
and that's not a YNAB thing. That's a me and Ernie thing. Like you and I disagree on a lot of things, but the cash accounts is not one of them.
I love my cash account so much. And yes, I reconcile it every single Friday.
There you go.
Like my life is that sad.
I just do it every once in a while, but yeah, we can talk more about that, about my cash account situation, but we'll move.
well, there's one final thing I wanted to say here too, with the adding savings, making sure that gets added as a budget account, not as a tracking account, is you can trust yourself. And that's something we see all the time, right? Folks don't want to add that account because they think they're going to spend it. If they see it, they're going to spend it. But I think people really can trust themselves.
You're not. I mean, unless you have like a proper like spending problem, that like an emotional issue that you need to like speak with the therapist about.
Sure.
Barring that, you're just not, because of the way YNAB works. I mean,
yes.
If you're looking at your categories before you spend, you're gonna make good decisions, because again, you'll know what you're giving up if you do spend more than you planned. So yeah, you're just not, like, you can trust yourself. It's gonna be okay.
And it's crazy because with the YNAB method, there's so much self-actualization that comes from that.
Yeah.
As you give every dollar a job, it's just like, I don't know, your brain starts thinking and working differently, and you start realizing, oh, this is what I want. This is what I want my money to do. It's really a fun process.
Yeah. And even if you don't add it to YNAB because you don't trust yourself, it's not like the money ceases to exist. Like, it's there. It's not going to solve the problem of like, oh, I don't trust myself. Even if you have a spending problem, it's just, that's not how it works. So, yeah, and I think people worry about like seeing it all the time. But again, you're seeing it all the time in the context of your priorities and what you care about. And that is what makes the difference. It's actually better. The money's going to be better protected if it has a job in YNAB than if it's just sitting in a savings account that you kind of try to ignore, but you know is always there and is always an option, right? So, yeah, just do it. Just do it. Just do it.
All right, mistake number 4. You don't account for the starting balance of your credit card. So this is this could be for every YNABber, but I'm specifically thinking new YNABbers. They add their account, whether it's a linked or unlinked account, and they don't even look at the credit card payment category that YNAB creates for them.
Yeah.
They just instantly start recording and importing the new credit card spending, which is great, but you're leaving out a plan for all of the previous spending that you've already done on the card pre-YNAB.
Yeah. And this is fraught because, I mean, there's so many things that come out with this, specifically the credit card float. I think a lot of the reason why people don't add money for the for the past spending on the card is because if they did, they'd have no money for anything else, right?
Yeah, completely.
And so it can be tough. It's never fun. It's never fun, like explaining to somebody that was sure they weren't in debt, right? Because they pay the credit card in full, they're doing everything right. That like, no, you've been in debt this whole time. You've been dependent on this card the whole time, and that's by design. And I'm going to start ranting. So, anyways, but it's so that's one reason, and another reason is just because you miss it. Like, you don't know how YNAB works. And so, you just don't think about it. And then later on, it kind of catches up and it's like, oh, there was a bunch of money that you needed to account for that you spent on something else. So this has got a lot better with some software changes. So much better. I mean, at first it was just like, we said we had them create a target, like right when they added the credit card. We're not doing that now because it was like a little bit of an extra step that was confusing. Like it didn't come in the right context. Now we have the credit card warning, which will give you the information in a better context.
Yep.
So Anyways, it's gotten a lot better. But
Yeah,
this
as
seems to
soon
be
as
much
that-
more of a problem, I think.
As soon as that payment category is added, that payment category is yellow.
Yeah, saying, hey,
It's
this
to
needs money, right?
Get your attention. Hey, you need to make a decision about how you're going to handle this current balance.
And then the decisions can be laid out, like, hey, cover it in full if you want to pay in full. If it's past debt that you're paying off over time, make a plan for that. Instead of just at the very beginning, it was just kind of like, good luck. Hopefully you see some random blog article that tells you to do this. Or
And maybe
you ask the
that's
community.
maybe that's what I'm getting at here with this one is I'm not saying that day one you have to assign money directly to your payment category. Because
Right.
maybe you have a paycheck coming in a couple days, or there's just enough of cash to assign, and that credit card payment isn't for another couple weeks, whatever the case may be. But at least make a plan. Like,
Yeah, if your intention is to
register,
pay it in full. you gotta-
here's how much I owe, and here's what YNAB is telling me I need to set aside if I want to pay this down to zero by my next credit card payment. So what does that mean? So I need X amount of dollars right now. I need maybe X from the next paycheck. Just create that plan, because this comes up all the time in the credit card workshop. Folks are like, why is my credit card payment category red? I paid it down to zero. Like, I had the money in my checking account. What did I do wrong
Yeah.
on the spending plan side of things? Well,
Yeah.
you didn't assign any money to deal with it.
Yeah. And what's tough is, like, sometimes that can take months to even, like, come out,
Yeah.
And where it's like, oh, yeah, 3 months ago you didn't add $300 there to cover past spending on that card. So that's that's where it's coming out now, and that's always a bummer. But I think it's gotten a lot better now with the software changes and the signals to be like, hey, pay attention to this.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot.
And I think some of this ties back to that first point we were talking about of using the software without learning the method first, kind of forgetting all of the traditional budgeting methodologies and things that you knew. Like, YNAB's different. We're proactive. We're about looking forward. So yes, your system worked in the past, but YNAB is a completely different system now.
Right.
And you're going to be thinking about and approaching credit cards a lot differently.
Yeah, like a huge shift in thinking for a lot of people was thinking of credit card as just another payment method rather than a bill that they pay at the end of the month, right? And that once you get that shift, it makes a lot more sense to be like, oh yeah, I need to cover the spending, because it already happened, right? Yeah, that's a big one for sure. That has gotten a lot better, but it's still really needs to be taught in a lot of cases. So, all right, next one. Using too many accounts, and I added here for no reason. So there might be some reasons to have a lot of accounts in YNAB. Like I think of like an HSA, like that's a tax sheltered account. It has to be separate for tax reasons, right? But I just see even veteran YNABers just having like 5 checking accounts and like 10 savings accounts, and I'm like, and like 17 credit cards. I mean, like, there's reasons people do that, I know, but it's just like, guys, like, you're making this really hard on yourself. It's a lot. I can't even imagine, like, just having that many cards in my wallet that I would have to pick which one to spend from alone is a nightmare for me. But yeah, like the way I think of it is, if you're going to have a separate account, you need to have like a really clear reason for having that account that has nothing to do with just separating money, what YNAB does, right? But I think a lot of people come in with a lot of different accounts because they've been trying to find a way to do YNAB without YNAB. And that's the most obvious way, because that's the way that the whole financial system is set up, right? But and they never really let go of that. So I think that's one reason why. But what are some other reasons why people have just too many accounts, all too much?
Well, I don't know if there's any other reasons than what you stated.
It's just
right?
what you bring in, you think?
Yeah, what you bring in. You're like, this is the one I had when I got my first job at 16. And, then I moved off and I opened this one. And then I got a bonus for this one. And
yeah,
I think a lot of times when I notice these situations is the balances in all these extra accounts are so small too. Like $50 here, a few $100 there. Like,
oh gosh, I'm stressed out.
Just
thinking about it.
Just close them. I know it is a pain to close accounts, but just do like one a week or one a month. and roll that $50 into your main savings, your main checking, and YNABs are going to get so much simpler. And not only YNAB, but that person's life is going to be simplified so much easier going forward as well.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I have an account like that like I opened this Bank of America checking account when I was like 16 years old, like went with my dad in the bank, I was like 15 or 16. I think I had my first job. Right. And I still have it. The only reason why I have it is because I want to have, I do most of my banking with an online bank, and I want to be able to like go to a teller and be like, hey, I want $10 bills, $101 bills. I want to be able to like, 'cause things that an ATM can't do. Right. So that's the only reason why I have it. But I've been like, man, the Bank of America is like, it's like a 20-minute drive away from my house, which for me may as well be like 5 hours. Like that's just, I don't go places, I mean, if I'm going places, I'm going places, I work from home. I'm not going to anyways. So I'm like, maybe I should just open an account at this little regional bank that's like 2 minutes from my house and close the Bank of America account. But, it's just such a flipping pain to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and also I have that little thing where I'm like, oh, but this little account's been around for 20 years, and it's so cute.
It doesn't matter.
I know, it so doesn't matter. I know Bank of America isn't nostalgic about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, definitely nostalgia is not a good reason to keep an account around. But those reasons where it's like, oh, this is a tax one, or this,
yes,
or even I need a little money in a place so I can talk to a teller if I need to. Those are good reasons to have an account around. But separating money out into like a vacation savings account and like get rid of that. Consolidate it all to one savings account.
Yeah, if the balance is low, if you're not getting a regular paycheck deposited in that account,
just wrap it up.
You don't spend from it. Yeah, just wrap it up. Oh, here's a reason that I just thought of why folks may end up with all the accounts is they're using YNAB with their partner.
Yeah, that's another legit reason too.
Yeah, that gets it. Well, yeah, because you
might have like a joint account and separate checking accounts.
Right, you had all these accounts from your previous life. They have them from theirs, and then you combine.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, like the arbitrary accounts could be just because it's like when you move in together and you have like 25 forks and like they're different. It's like, what do we do with all these forks?
Yep.
You got to do the same thing with your accounts.
And
just
there is no one way for partners to set up YNAB. You can have all separate accounts and use YNAB and be on the same page with money with your partner, or you can have all shared accounts. It really doesn't matter. I think what we're getting at here is just having a discussion with your partner of like, what do we want to do? Like, we've got all these accounts, our account structure. Let's make a decision here. Yeah.
I think the bottom line here is like, be intentional with your accounts. Don't keep the accounts around just because you've had them around.
Yeah.
And I should probably go close that Bank of America account because I don't really want to drive that far to get specific change, but I do anyways.
You just have to wait until life organically, naturally brings you to that area of town.
Wait, that's what I did this morning because I went to a restaurant there for breakfast, and I was over there, and so I was like, oh, I need to get some money because I'm going to the thing. Yeah, so I did do that, but I'm still annoyed about it. It really actually isn't that big a deal. That's why I haven't actually changed the account. It's not that big a deal, but it's just it's like at a certain point the pain of driving 20 minutes gets larger than the pain of having to open an account at another bank. So
maybe once your kids get a little bit older, or maybe they don't need to be any older, maybe you're already hitting that point where like, I need a break. Like, let's drive 20 minutes back and forth and close an account. A little me time.
That is the thing. Or like in the winter, man, when you got like little kids in the winter, like there's so much to do when the weather's nice, and when it's cold or snowing or like icy, and just like, what do I do with these kids? So like sometimes it's like just put them in the car and drive around for a while, so and put on like a little story, a little radio story.
Take them through the car wash and then stop at Stop at the bank.
When I go to the car wash, I will with the kids. I will put like half of it on auto maintenance and half of it on entertainment. That's what it is.
We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
That is totally legit.
It's entertainment. It's fun for them. They love it.
It is
It's fun for me too.
Especially if you have the rainbow soap.
Oh,
I mean, that's pretty cool.
There's a reason. Yeah, there's like, you go in there and it's like you're in a club, man. There's like lasers and they know what they're doing. It's fun. There's colors. And then I always roll the windows down when we go through the blowers, the dryers, and there's like the stuff blowing around. The kids are all screaming, ah! And it's very fun. I probably am destroying their hearing or something, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah, they'll remember it forever.
You got to roll the windows down.
Dad, I can't hear, but man, thanks for that time.
My oldest will always do that. Like sometimes I don't. I'm like, I don't want to deal with the drama today. I'm not going to roll it down. But then like now my 10-year-old's in the car and she's like, Dad, don't roll the windows down. And she's kind of smiling when she says it. And I'm like, all right, now I got to do it because she said not to. Anyways, all right.
Love it.
So too many accounts. What's the next one?
Lying to YNAB.
Oh, yes.
This was your idea. So what are you thinking here, Ben?
Well, I wrote a blog about this a while ago. It used to be called called Tell Your Budget the Truth. That's what the blog was called. I think we changed it now. We made it more tame, which all right, that's fine, I guess. I think it's called I think it's called
Common Mistakes.
Yeah, 3 common mistakes. So, I guess that's what people are searching. So, but anyways, but yeah, I was real snarky with it because I find a lot of people lie to YNAB. They just don't tell her the truth. And I think I did this. I've been guilty of this as well. And really, if you're lying to YNAB, you're lying to yourself because the whole reason it exists is to help you. You're not lying to anybody else. But I'll explain what I mean by lying. One is, adding more money than you actually have. So adding future paychecks, things like that, where you're kind of inflating these available amounts to where they're not really telling you the truth. You can make your plan totally useless because when you look at your grocery category, when you're at the grocery store, you got all this monopoly money in there and you're not really sure what's real, right? And so you're lying to yourself, and you're making it harder to make those spending decisions as a result. So that's one. Another one was just not covering overspending for a long time, and even maybe even letting it ride over months. You know what I mean? Again, same thing. Like you're adding monopoly money into your plan and making it harder to rely on it for spending decisions. And then there was another one. What was it? I'm gonna look that up because we avoid entering spend. Okay, that's another one. Yeah, avoid entering spending. So I got a story about this. Yeah. I don't think my sister would mind me sharing this because she's changed so much in this time. But I remember, so my sister was dealing with a lot of debt. My sister Trish. If you come to our live streams, you might have seen her.
She's always there.
She shows up in the live stream. So she is a diehard YNABber now. But her YNAB journey is so interesting because when she started, she was in a lot of debt and it was tough. It was a lot of, she had to make a lot of tough decisions to deal with that. But she also just didn't, she kind of wanted a YNAB, but she also didn't. And I remember we were talking about it at one point and I was just telling her yeah, you got to draw a line in the sand and go for it. Cause she was trying to make a decision about her debt. And she was yeah, it's just there's one credit card I don't even have in YNAB. And I was like, what? I was like, is this a credit card you're spending from? She's like, yeah, it's my daily credit card, the one that I do all my spending on. And I was like, what? It did not compute. I'm like, so you're just not putting all your spending in? And she's like, Ben, YNAB doesn't have to know about everything.
Yes, it does.
Well, it kind of does because it's zero based, because of the zero based nature of it. If you don't tell it about all your spending, it kind of loses its whole point, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to, I don't think I said it at the time because I didn't want to put her off, but she did realize that eventually. And she's like, okay, yeah, I got to deal with this. But she just wanted to be able to spend without worrying about it. She's at war with herself. You know what I mean? It really, I think that's what she would say. Where you're I want to pay attention to my spending, but I also don't want to because it's just easier in the moment to not be intentional, you know?
Yep.
But I just love that story because it's so funny. I mean, now she's like such a YNABber that like she would be just as mortified as I was. But yeah, you know, she's lying to herself. You lie to yourself by like not adding some of these spending accounts that are really important. We talked about not adding too many accounts. Sometimes you don't add enough because there's spending happening that's not being captured in YNAB. It's a significant amount of spending. And you can't make the spending decisions because a lot of your spending isn't involved with the rest of the system, you know?
Yep.
So that's and then, or it could be simpler. It could just be, you have the account and you spent money and you're going to have to deal with it. You know, it's going to cause overspending. So you just like, don't add the transaction for a while, you know, because you don't want to deal with it right now. That's
especially if it's a big expense like a car repair. You don't want to see that overspend category for the entire month. And then
it's, you know, I so get it, but what you got to remember in the end, this is a tool. It's not something that's in charge of you. You're in charge of it, and it's there to help you. And and it is an expression of you, you know? So if you lie to it, you're really just lying to yourself. And it's always better to know the truth, even if it's ugly, you know?
That's the thing. The point is not to be responsible,
right?
To make wise financial decisions and all of that junk. The point is awareness, intentionality, clarity, confidence, less second guessing. Mm-hmm. Right? Those are the things that we want you to experience. And the only way that you get that is by being honest with where you're at. No matter how good or how bad that situation is, that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. And there's no judgment in that as well. Mm-hmm. It's a tool, like you said, for you to move forward, to better yourself.
Yeah. If you're doing any of these things, I don't want you to feel like, oh, it's Ben's the enemy because, you know, I'm not being responsible, or it's just you know, it's good for you. That's what it's about, you know? So I think it's enough for that right now. If you're feeling that, let us know in the comments, because I feel like a lot of people are in that boat sometimes. I mean, I've done it too. You know, I have 3 overspent categories in my plan right now. 2 of them are waiting on reimbursements, and I'm like, it's fine, you know. But like, technically, there's monopoly money in my plan right now. Right now, I think this is an interesting thing. Like, if you've been YNABing for a while and you have a lot of cash, like, your threshold for tolerating a little overspending goes up, because it's like, okay, there's thousands of dollars in my budget, but a $10 overspending isn't going to like cause me to overdraft or something, right? Yep. So there's a ratio there, so where it's like, okay, I can wait a week to get the reimbursement for this, you know, but it's not the technical way to handle it. But I'm doing that because I know it's going to be okay. I'm not doing it because I want to avoid it. You know what I mean? So there's a difference there.
Yeah, and this is something that I remember, I've talked about this on the show, but it's something I experienced a couple summers ago where there was a lot of spending going on. Some of it was planned, a lot of it wasn't. And it felt like we were bleeding money. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I avoided dealing with that feeling for pretty much all summer long. Like, I knew it was happening. Mm-hmm. And eventually, though, when I got to the point where like, I just need to sit down with YNAB and like look at everything, like go through every single category. And I didn't have overspent categories. Like, I wasn't ignoring what was actually happening. I was just ignoring the feelings that had been building up and adjusting my expectations going forward.
Right.
And so just by shuffling some money around, you know, it made me feel better. Yeah. I'm like, okay, so I'm grounded with where I'm at right now. You know, those emotions have been resolved, and I can move on. So we're human. I get it. You know, we're not going to deal with it right away all the time. That's okay. But eventually you want to come back.
I like that you're really avoiding the feelings. And sometimes when you actually deal with it, you're like, oh, actually the feelings were worse.
Right. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the avoiding was worse because it actually, it's not that bad. I had this happen on a vacation one time. This is a funny story because we set a bunch of money aside to go like to like a Caribbean vacation, right? And then unexpectedly we found out, like literally like that night, unexpectedly found out we were having another kid who was going to come at the time we were planning on going vacation. So that was out. And we were like, okay. So, but we like left, and we used a lot of money for saving for, the new baby, but we like left a good chunk of money in like some kind of a baby moon vacation we wanted to go on. Right. And we ended up doing like a weekend away in Asheville, in North Carolina. So it's just like, it's very not the same thing as like an all expense resort in the Caribbean situation, right? But it was a fun vacation, and because we had money in there, Caitlin, my wife, was like, we are not going to take it out. Like we didn't need it. We didn't need nearly as much, but she's like, we're not taking it out of there. We are going to spend it on this vacation. And I'm like, yes. And I was like, so yes, because I am the spender. Kaylin is not. Like she's more of like the cautious saver type, and I'm more of the we'll figure it out. Let's spend it. So the fact that she was like this was great, and she got some things, and so we were just like shopping, but like something came over me when because we were shopping all these stores where like she was spending a lot of money, but like I wasn't interested in any of it. So I was just like, are we okay? Because when you're on vacation, like you don't check as much, and then you like deal with it later. And I remember like sitting down on a bench while she was in the store, and I like pulled out my phone and I like categorized all the spending that we were dealing with, and I was like nervous about it. And then like once I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, we're fine. This is great, and then I could just enjoy it. So yeah, actually looking at it and stop lying to yourself, stop ignoring it. Sometimes it's actually even easier than avoiding it and dealing with those feelings. So
I do this demo in the credit card workshop where there's a big car repair, and it creates like $600 to $800 of overspending in the month. And then I show what YNAB does when you move forward.
Okay.
And this shocks me every time, and I just realized this. But in the next month, you have credit card debt, right?
Right.
And so what I show the folks how to do is now create a target, how to make a plan to pay off that credit card debt. Mm-hmm. And the amount, I don't know how, I set the target like 6 months in the future or something. Uh-huh. And the amount that I have to put aside to pay off that debt every month is so small. It always shocks me.
Yeah.
Like I have this big...
You like set up this whole scenario exactly. And you're like, oh, wow, it's so small.
You're right. Yeah. It's not that, like you look at that one singular overspend purchase, right? You're like, whoa, that's a big amount of money. But then when you make a plan to pay it off, you realize...
It's calming.
It's manageable. Like I can do this. Like I don't have to deal with that huge number every single month. I just need to deal with this monthly number, and I can hit that. So
yeah. And sometimes that's the way to deal with things, is like just move the time horizon out and like admit, hey, I'm gonna chunk at this for a little while, and that's okay. And that can be very, very calming as well.
Yeah.
Just
so
kind
when
of being realistic,
you're just honest with yourself in the situation, I think you're gonna feel better moving forward.
Yeah. So stop lying to YNAB and stop lying to yourself.
Okay. Right, we are at number 7.
Okay.
Not checking YNAB before spending.
Yes, the idea that we've talked about many times, find the money first. So,
and this kind of sounds like one of those, we're telling people, be responsible, like be wise with your money. But again, that's not what it's about here.
No, it's just, it's again, it's a practice that's for you, because it's so much better for you in the long run. So the practice is before you spend, you check that relevant category.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have the money, go for it. No worries. Don't, hopefully just even that can be really freeing for a lot of folks, especially if you're not like a spender type. But if you don't have the money, you have 2 choices. You can say no to the spending. I'm not going to spend that money right now. Or you can look through your categories, find the money in other categories, move it. So you find the money first before you spend, and then go and do the spending. And what the difference there is that you weigh the trade-offs. You actually know what you're giving up in order to do that, as opposed to spending the money and then realizing, oh, I made trade-offs that I didn't even know what they were. And if I had if I had tried to find the money first, I may have made a different choice.
Right. Then it's the regret.
Yeah, the regret.
Second guessing. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the worst. And so, yeah, I know. I'm sure some people are like, "Oh boy, that's so stupid. Like, I have to check the app before I spend." Like, I'm a big boy, big girl, right? I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
But no, we want you to avoid that regret, the second guessing, the like constant. It just lives rent free in your head until you pay that credit card bill 45 days later. Like, you can avoid all of that just by simply taking out your phone, checking YNAB. And, if you use YNAB regularly, you're going to get to that point where you don't even need to pull it out because you have a general sense of where you're
reconciling every
category.
day and just kind of looking. I mean, I have iOS widgets on my phone that show me 3 categories at a time. And you can like stack them. You can like stack widgets on top of each other so you can scroll. So I've got...
That's a big no-no in my book, though.
Oh, you don't like stacking them?
Keep it simple, man.
Oh, but I love it because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 categories.
Like, that's not the purpose of the widget. The widget is to simplify everything.
I mean, but it's simple. I just scroll and it has a nice animation and it makes my brain feel happy when I move it around. I don't know.
I've got 3 categories in the widget and I've got 4 widgets on the screen. Like, I don't want to scroll up and down through widgets.
Well, how is that simpler, Ernie? That's not simpler. That's just taking up more of your space.
I have one YNAB widget.
Oh,
and then I have 3 other ones, and they all fit on one screen. No scrolling.
Yeah. Well, that's the only one I use to scroll, but I love it because I can look at all the ones that I got restaurants. I got my 2 restaurants categories. I got groceries on here, and I got gas, entertainment, and compassion, and then I got my spending, and I got my kids because they're always asking me how much money do I have in my spending category, Dad, and that's why I can look at it. I don't know. I think it's great.
Yep. Oh, sorry, I distracted you from the point you were actually making. Sorry.
Oh yeah, what was the point? Oh well, I can look quickly, and it doesn't have to be like this socially awkward thing where I'm like, oh, well, I'd like to go hang out with you, but I'll check YNAB first. You know what I mean? Just check it at a glance, and be like, oh yeah, we're good. And also, I just like see it all the time, so I kind of get like a vibe for it, But yeah, just make that a practice. I see it all the time in the communities where people are like, I've been using YNAB for a while, but like, I feel like I'm just spending how I normally would spend and then kind of dealing with it later in YNAB. And that's powerful because you are dealing with your spending, right? And you are being aware. But the next level is when you actually check before and let it guide your spending ahead of the spending. And that's when the real life change happens, I think.
Yeah, totally.
So, huge. I mean, I this is more of an advanced thing. I think a lot of people start off with like kind of it's more tracking, or it's a little more than just tracking because it's happening more in real time. But the closer and closer you get to actually switching over to using YNAB to guide your spending ahead of time, that's when it really shifts and things start taking off.
I'm coming up on 12 years of using YNAB, and I still regularly check my categories, like especially my individual categories. I don't know if you know this, Ben, but I broke out. I used to have just one fun money category, and Christy and I give each other each $100 every single month. So that 100 would just go into the category, and I would just kind of spend whatever. And then, I'd look at the number and I kind of had in my head, like, here's what I want to spend it on. So I always had an idea of my priorities, but I actually listed them out. So now I have a group, 5 separate categories, and I check that like a hawk, especially the food and drink, because that's where I want to spend from a lot. Like Wednesdays, the boys, they walk a neighbor dog. So I like taking that time to go get a burrito, something like that.
Go to Chipotle, right?
Yeah. I didn't want to say it. But
not a sponsor, guys, but
But now, since I've broken everything out, the 2 main priorities, I'm saving for golf this summer because golf is expensive.
Right.
And I have a category for sporting events, like professional football, basketball games type thing. So,
and you save up for those in there.
And these are all in the future. And so I know that I have to set money aside for them right now.
Right.
And so that's why I look at my food and drink category, and hey, if the money's not there, or it's going to put me at a really low spot knowing I'm going to be eating out later on in the month, it's easy for me to say no. Because I'm like, no, I want to golf this summer. Like, that is what's most important to me. I don't need this burrito right now.
Yeah, that's true. It makes you feel better because otherwise it's like just vibes, you know? I mean, my wife started doing this. She has a bunch of categories, and we used to have one category for spending, and it's still like that where you like stick all the money into one spending category, but she'll break it up. And then I started doing it too. Mine's a lot less than hers because, let's be honest, my spending category is just for food and drink anyway. But but probably the big one is I do have my poker category. So because I play poker with my buddies, and like I want to have like a good chunk of change in there. So when I buy in and I'm playing, it changes like the way you play, you know, because if I'm like, well, if I'm out of this, then I'm done for the month or whatever, you know what I mean? So I want to have a good chunk of money in there. So that's what I do. And this month I needed some extra in there because it's not been going well. And, so I took like half my personal spending and put it in there. And yeah, I had the same thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to say no to going out to eat on my own again. Like I do probably too much anyway. But the reason why is because no, I want to have those poker nights, you know? So yeah, it makes a big difference for sure.
For me, checking YNAB before I spend allows me to be more of me. Plain and simple. That's what it comes down to.
Well said.
And so I will forever practice that.
All right. The next one is near and dear to our hearts. Using new paychecks to pay back old spending. Okay, yeah. Why don't you explain this one, Ernie?
Yeah, because this is totally me. This is what
Well, this was like more of a recent change for you too, like within the past like 5 years or so.
Yes, early on in my YNAB journey, probably
I think for me too.
3 or 4 years in.
Okay, so it's been a while,
and it is something that I see in the YNAB community quite a bit, where payday arrives, and you have all these overspent categories. So these brand new dollars that you just received have to go towards paying back the stuff you already bought.
Right.
And that just leaves you less money to proactively tell, hey, here's what I need you to do for me before I start spending you.
Right.
So it's opposite of the YNAB method. And it took me a number of years to realize this. But once I drew that line in the sand and said, okay, if I overspend in a category, fine, no big deal, but I'm not going to wait till payday. I'm going to correct it right now with money from some other category. I'm going to make that trade-off real. And it wasn't until Christy and I regularly started doing that where we started seeing some gains. Like,
and gains I just remember getting a month ahead and that kind of stuff too, right?
Right, because now we can get further ahead of the bills and expenses this month. We can start getting a month ahead, you know, with that goal of being fully funded on the 1st. But it just felt so good. Like I just got this new money and it all gets to go towards stuff that I haven't even bought yet. Like it's all going in the future.
Right. It's almost like credit card float, but you're borrowing from yourself. Almost, you know what I mean? And it's a frustrating place to be because, again, man, it all comes back to trade-offs for me and like being aware of your trade-offs. I mean, if you do this where you're kind of hand wavy about overspending because you know you're getting another paycheck soon, you don't know what the trade-off was. Like when you continue, especially if you like continue to overspend in that category, knowing, hey, more money's coming, I'll take care of it then. That money could have gone to any number of things. And so, but you're taking the options away and you don't even know what you're taking away because you haven't made the plan. So you don't know what the trade-off is. And so, yeah, like you said, is the opposite of YNAB. It really is because you're kind of promising future money now, before you actually get it. And so it is a subtle thing, but I think it makes a big difference. And so the answer is cover overspending from within the same month. Is that how you describe it?
And cover it right away.
Yeah.
And then just the breathing room, the stability, the resilience, that all follows. Then you're going to look at your checking account balance 6 months down the road and be like, whoa, this is the most money we've ever had in our checking account balance. Like you're going to start seeing those changes.
I'm feeling some conviction because of those 3 overspent categories waiting for reimbursements.
Well, that's slightly different.
I mean, is it though? Is it though? Because I don't technically have that money. But yeah, it is true. Bessie, my dog, is drinking water and she's the loudest. Wow. And she's dripping it everywhere. I don't know if you know Great Danes. Bessie, come here. Come here. Come here. Say hello. Say hello to our friends. This is a tangent, but can she get in frame? Here she is. It's a puppy. Yeah, they have these huge jowls, and it's just like imagine if you had like holes in your mouth. That's what they're like. So they drink a bunch of water, and it just like falls out. Anyways, she's crazy.
Bessie's temperament. I know you've talked about this before,
She's
but
got
just
a great temperament.
the best.
She's the best temperament.
That
She's
is not
you have
rich.
a good temperament, Bessie. Yeah, she's very calm. The chillest dog I've ever had. So, all right. Anyways, that's a tangent. But you can be the chillest person you ever were because you don't make these mistakes. There we go. Ride it back.
Well done.
All right. Should we do some YNAB wins?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
All right. All right. I have an email from Sarah who wrote in and said, I've been a YNAB user for almost 2 years. Unfortunately for me, my bank account was compromised and I ended up having to close the account and start all over. That's stressful enough without having to worry about making sure I update all my payment information in, well, basically everything. Oh, yes. That's another terrible thing about closing accounts, especially if it's one you use all the time. You got to you get like all these emails for all these subscriptions that are like, your debit card didn't work. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Anyways. All right. It's frustrating. Okay. Thanks to YNAB, I was able to pull up my budget. There we go. And go line by line to see where I needed to change my banking information. I was able to get all my bills, my car payment, my true expenses, everything. It was such a burden off my shoulders not having to make sure everything was changed. Thanks, YNAB. Yes, so this is a frustration with changing your bank that really goes away. I changed my bank a few years ago, and that's exactly what I did. I said, okay, I went line by line through all my categories and said, okay, these are all the places I need to go to change out my card information so that they can charge me automatically. And it wasn't that difficult, There was like a few things that came up that I missed, but it wasn't that big a deal, So love that.
That's a great win.
I'm sorry you had to deal with it, but glad I made it a little bit easier.
My win comes from Gabby. Gabby also emailed in the show probably over a year ago.
Sorry, Gabby.
Folks, we're still really behind on all of these, but I think that's a good problem to have.
I think it's good.
My husband and I finally paid off his student loan debt. I wish I could remember exactly how much it was when he and I started dating 10 years ago, but it was enough to make me nervous as a person who personally didn't have any student debt. When the payments resumed, we had a plan because we've been using YNAB since 2019, so we knew how to reprioritize. The Save Repayment plan also helped since we could just use the money from the car we had just paid off a few months prior. We had just under $13,000 left on the loan, and I got a very generous bonus at work that covered 95% of the payment, and we had a paycheck from my husband's high school basketball job that would cover the rest. What a blessing. After a few budget date discussions, we knew we just had to knock it out and free up our cash flow.
I love that.
Congratulations, Gabby. And I'm pretty sure this is the Gabby that we had on the show way back in the day.
Hey, awesome. Well done, Gabby.
So yeah,
that's so great.
Finally paid off that student loan. What a great feeling. And now there's all that cash. And at this time, they've probably, done 20 different things with that freed up cash flow. But let us know, Gabby, what things look like now.
I feel like this happens a lot where YNABers are going after debt, and then toward the end, they're like throwing everything they can at it, and just getting it knocked out. Because I think YNABers really value cash flow over even having cash around sometimes, in a really good way. So I think that's really fun. Cool.
Well, folks, if you have a YNAB win, you can always email it in budgetnerds@ynab.com. Make sure you let us know that it is a win. That's kind of cues me in on that you want it to be shared on the show, and then we'll make sure to do that in a future episode. Or if you want, you can also leave a YNAB win in the YouTube comments.
All right. Well, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Until then, happy YNABing.
Happy YNABing, friends.